Donna Peeples, and welcome to Peeples2People. I serve as Chief Customer Officer at Pipestream, a startup, relatively new, but in startup years, pretty much a grandfather. Started in 2005 and have become the market leader in conversational AI. So we're proud to be joined today by Lucas Watson, who's CMO of Cruise Automation. Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Donna. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking time today.
Well, thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great. Well, we're going to talk about AI. I mean, that's the new buzzword. You know, we've gone through the year of the chatbot. We've gone through the year of big data and customer journey mapping. So AI is a hot topic now. And we're going to talk about today, how does AI affect our daily lives? But maybe even more importantly, what does it look like 5 years out? What's going to happen? So if you would start off, Lucas, tell the audience a little bit about you and what you do, and we're interested to hear.
Of course. Well, as you said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Cruise Automation. We are a startup as well, founded in 2013 that makes self-driving cars. We were founded by a guy named Kyle Vogt and Daniel Kahn. We were bought by General Motors about 1.5 years ago, and so we're now fully owned by General Motors. But our mission is to bring cars that will drive themselves to the world's population here, hopefully within the next year. And so you may have heard about Waymo or Cruise as these brands that will make it reality, where you'll be able to get in a car and get from point A to point B without a human in the car, and it's really going to happen. So my mission and challenge is to develop a brand and to develop a trust that will enable customers to feel safe enough to get in a car with no person and trust that it will get them from point A to point B. And so what do we call we communicate our benefits, and how do we think about making people feel safe enough to give it a try? That's the real mission.
Well, I have a marketing idea to help you with that. If
Excellent.
The audience like me have ever tried to teach their teenage children how to drive, there's nothing more scary than that. So
exactly right.
I'm all for it.
Absolutely. When you actually think about us as humans and we get emotional, we text and drive, we can be tired. We only have 2 eyes. These cars often have many more eyes. There's actually lots of reasons to believe why a self-driving car might be safer than human.
Yeah, exactly. And, as we're looking at the world of AI and what the possibilities are, you're in charge of growth at Cruise Automation. So, how do you think about that growth, and how do you think about AI fitting into that growth? I mean, to your point, you take a human out of the equation, the possibilities are that you could even take error out of the equation, the process, or whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Well, I mean, in one sense, artificial intelligence and customer experience will be crucial for our brand, right? There is no driver in the car anymore. And so we're actually having tons of conversations as it relates to how do we interact with our customers when there's no driver in the front seat. And so we have to think through how we welcome a passenger into the car, how we tell them to buckle their seatbelt, how we tell them what's happening within the car, and imagine that something bad happens. How do we manage a problem, or just I forgot my sunglasses? And
right.
So we could either have offices and offices of customer service agents filled up to the brim, or we could figure out how to use technology and artificial intelligence to help us serve and delight our customers. And so there's very real applications for us. And given that we're a startup and we have significant cost structure, we have to make a computer that actually can drive itself, and we have to have the car. We have to find efficient ways to create customer delight. And we'll absolutely use technology to help solve some of that problem.
Well, customers are definitely driving disruption in all markets, in my opinion. We want things the way we want, when we want them, how we want them. And that's not going to change.
Totally.
I read recently that by 2060, AI will be capable of performing nearly all jobs as we know them today that are performed by humans. And I think that's very interesting. I don't know about you, but one of the questions I get around the automations that we do is, we're taking away jobs when in fact we've seen over times in economies that, we've gone from labor to labor arbitrage to elimination of labor. Are we looking at not just a blue collar and white collar, but a no collar working group?
Sure. Well, I think if you think about it for a minute, we hopefully have a long time on this earth. Last time I checked, life expectancies are expanding. And, I think humans just in general have a desire to be productive and have a desire to contribute to society. And if you think of the opportunities, I have 4 children under the age of 12. The jobs that my children will do will be different than the ones we grew up aspiring to do. In fact, quite frankly, I've worked for Google and I've worked for Intuit and I've worked now for Cruise. All 3 of those are companies that didn't exist when I was born, and quite frankly, didn't exist when I was going to school. And so in the spirit of one, working career or working generation, the jobs that we're doing and the companies that we work for are different than the ones that our parents did. But it doesn't mean innovation has stopped or slowed down. Quite frankly, I would argue we continue to innovate like crazy, and yet there's thousands of things that still haven't been solved, right? We haven't cured cancer yet. Last time I checked, there's still plenty of traffic and congestion out here in San Francisco to be solved. There's plenty of potholes that haven't been fixed. And so while certain things certain jobs will probably go away, there's others that will be created. In our work, we won't have drivers in our cars, but we're going to need to charge our cars. We're going to need to clean our cars. We're going to need to provide maintenance on our cars. That will create a different model than what was done before. Those are all jobs that are still going to have to happen. And I don't know that all of them will be solved by artificial intelligence, nor should they. So I think we'll find plenty of ways to stay busy. It just might be in different spaces than where we started. It will require a continual investment in skills and development and learning, which I think for all of us as humans is important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I love your take on things. It's not about replacing humans. It's about augmenting humans 100%. And using humans for their best purpose around creativity and emotional engagement and all the wonderful things that humans like you and I do.
Exactly.
So one of the questions that we had posed is, what do you think? I mean, do we really even know how much AI is touching our lives today? I mean, where is the world of AI at? Where have we matured to?
Of course. Look, artificial intelligence is a broad spectrum. And quite frankly, I probably don't have the technical underpinnings to give you a dissertation on the different applications of AI, or quite frankly, the different models and approaches to developing artificial intelligence. That being said, from what I can see and where I work, it's being applied in a lot more places than people probably understand. And, oftentimes we struggle with, where to apply artificial intelligence to actually create value for customers. And what I often help people understand is that areas where you have large sets of data that are being created, and where there is either a fixed number of answers or there is a set of logic or structure to whether it's a 1 or a 0 or a yes or a no. Those are wonderful places to apply machine learning and ultimately to get to artificial intelligence. Where it's probably least developed is in the open-ended and ambiguous space where there's a lot of unstructured data. There's not a lot of data. Those are the area, the elements of feeling and emotion are the least developed areas of artificial intelligence and may take many, many years. I don't have any forecast for how long it will take. But if you just think about it, my old world when I used to work at Intuit, when you're doing the bookkeeping and accounting, the fact that it can figure out, hey, that receipt was from Starbucks, that's probably itemized as entertainment and food and entertainment. That's artificial intelligence happening today, right? Or if my bank account statements can be automatically sorted, from highest to lowest, Those are applications of artificial intelligence happening. And in the same way with Pipestream, as you guys are able to answer questions for customers and customer service experiences, you're using elements of artificial intelligence to achieve that. And for us in self-driving cars, even just simulating, if we want to practice driving millions of miles but done in a simulator, we're often using machine learning and artificial intelligence to get to that. So it's happening all around us. We don't even realize it's happening, but it's being applied in thousands of applications that are influencing our lives already today.
Yeah, so right now, where we are today, it's about taking where we've come in AI and applying it in an IA way, or an intelligent automation way.
Yes,
is what I hear you say. So I don't know about you, Lucas, but it wasn't that many years ago that I was doing 5-year plans. Now it's hard to even imagine what 5 years from now looks like.
Sure.
So tell me, kind of take back the veil on the future of AI, and how will it truly be impacting us in our professional or personal lives?
So I think there's probably a couple different thoughts there to consider. One will be every forecast I see suggests that there will continue to be a massive explosion of data, right? So let's take Alexa and Google Home as an example. We never used to have a capture of all the conversation that might happen in a household. Whether they're capturing it or not, we'll leave it up to the privacy policies of Alexa and Google. But that being said, all of that conversation is now data that could be collected in a home environment. And at the same time, if you think of our self-driving cars, versus a traditional passenger car, a passenger car drives all across the road. Very little of where it drives ever gets captured. Our self-driving cars have 16 sensors on them, and we're capturing every ounce of data about the potholes, about the distance of the curb, about what the temperature was, where the sun direction is in the windshield. All that becomes opportunity to capture data. So we have this explosion of data happening all around us, and I think we all know that inherently. Which then creates opportunities to take the right pieces of that data and run it through artificial intelligence systems and machine learning systems to create customer value and customer benefit. And so I can't imagine all the applications, but again, I think the biggest challenge is going to be to direct our limited capability and time and space towards the areas of that data where we think we might be able to create value for customers. And again, areas where there are repeatable patterns with large data sets often are really good. As an example, I forgot my password, right? One of the most common customer service examples we all can go through. How many passwords do we all have, and how many times are we chatting, texting, calling a customer service experience saying, I forgot my password? That is a wonderful problem able to be solved by probably artificial intelligence, and has already been done in many of the IVR applications that we see. So just what are the other ones sitting around us that we could then go solve in that same vein?
Very good. Well, I think you make a great point. We're all being monitored all the time,
Sure.
If only by our smartphones. And, I think back, it wasn't, 1984. And Big Brother was watching. Sure. Now everybody's watching all the time.
Of course.
So valuable. You could argue too that, data is probably one of the most valuable commodities on earth now.
Sure.
The key is figuring out how to use it for good. Exactly. In the world, improving lives. So yeah, that's great. So you had said earlier, there's limitations today, but there's an awful lot of hype around AI. And so, a lot of the enterprises that we're working with are struggling with, where do you start to apply in a practical way the AI as it is today? Because, we've all had situations where there was, automations or non-human interactions that really didn't solve anything, and in fact could have frustrated us even more than we were already frustrated. So where do you start?
Oftentimes, the most productive or areas of greatest benefit are in the least exciting places sitting all around you, right? And so, again, I would be looking for repeatable patterns, lots of data, limited set of outcomes. So what are those? As an example, think I just approved 3 invoices for payment today within our own company. And so should I pay 3 vendors that we've agreed to, we have purchase orders with? The whole accounting, purchase order, invoice approval, the management system of who approves next in the routing chain. That happens all day, every day in everybody's company. Might be a wonderful place to apply artificial intelligence to solve a problem. Just making one example up. Imagine that in companies all day, every day, there are benefit questions, right? My 401k, my election of benefits we're all going through right now, being November. Everybody has those same problems. It's all tons of data, happens over and over and over again. The customer service experiences we've talked about. Another one would be even just if you think about it in stock picking, right? Like there's lots of data. Oftentimes humans make lots of decisions emotionally that are irrational and wrong. That could be a wonderful place where machine learning and artificial intelligence could be applied. So if you wanted a framework to think about, again, just reinforcing it, do I have a lot of data? Do I see repeatable patterns? And there are a limited set of outcomes or choices that might happen? And can I articulate a benefit if I were to automate or apply technology to this problem? Can I articulate in advance what I think the human benefit might be? Whether it's reduced hours, lower cost, better answers, higher customer satisfaction. Those might be four good questions to ask yourself when thinking about how do I apply this, in my job and my work every day.
So it's really about business results. What are they trying to accomplish? That hasn't changed a lot over time, just the way we apply it. I told some folks earlier today that I feel like personally, technology is becoming less and less a department or function and more just a way of working that permeates the business.
Yes.
And, even my mother is fluent online now, and she's got an opinion about everything.
Yeah.
If you told me she would have been my Facebook friend, I'd probably not believed you 5 years ago. But I'm looking over, Lucas, at our polling, and it looks like, just reminding everybody, we are taking a poll to see what you think about AI and where it's going to have the greatest impact going forward. And it looks like customer service is running away with the lead. And, that goes back to one of your first points that, the customer has control.
Totally.
And I'm not sure is it the Amazonification of the world that we're all expected, even if we're part of industries that have historically been laggards, are we expected to be on demand 24/7? Are we expected to deliver solutions? And, let's face it, nobody ever said I get excited about calling a call center. So, that's I agree with the audience. So thank you guys for chiming in. So Lucas, on the customer service piece of it, do you think that humans are going to avoid interaction with robotics of any sort? Do you think, what are you seeing today? Some people might say it's pretty scary hopping in a car without a driver.
Sure. If I were to watch my children, just as an example, or, 21-year-olds, I would argue, and if you look at the data, right, I would argue that forms of communication and engagement are actually changing, right? The picking up the phone and actually talking to somebody, sometimes we forget that these phones actually are a phone, right?
My daughter don't know that.
Exactly. My daughter doesn't want to have a conversation with me, but she's more than happy to text with me back and forth, right? And in customer service experiences, there's a lot of cases in which I would rather deal with a computer or with artificial intelligence or with a self-selection or a self-help experience. We see lots of data from some of my past experiences where I would rather chat than talk. And I would rather self-select and help myself than actually have to engage with somebody.
It helps us live in the margins, which we all do now.
Exactly. And so I just think that forms of human communication and engagement are changing, and we have to keep remembering that, as Facebook has taught us and as human psychology has taught us, there's different levels of relationship, right? And so with my wife or with my mom, I have a human conversation face to face. But with a customer service agent from Delta, who I don't know, I might be just as comfortable texting or engaging with a computer as I might be waiting on a phone for what is often a less than ideal phone experience. And so I think tailoring your form of communication to the level of human trust that has been established between the two parties is an important part to think about. I wouldn't want to have an artificial intelligent conversation with my wife or with my mom, but I might with a customer service experience for a brand that I don't know or interact with very often. So I think tailoring how you communicate, depending on the level of depth of relationship you have with the other person on the other end, is something that customer experience and brand leaders need to think about in architecting the right experience for the right customer. Absolutely.
Well, change is hard, and people are naturally resistant, even if the change is for the good. So it's so that's an obstacle for us all to overcome. But I've got a question from Cy that's come in. So Lucas, how do you think cities might change with the introduction of self-driving cars?
We hope they will change massively, right? And in the short term, there will likely be, what I'll call some disruption and some confusion in that you're going to have self-driving cars, human-driven cars, bikes and scooters and all these things. You'll have private car ownership and cars parked all over the place. And it could get more congested before it gets better, right? And that's part of our responsibility is to try to manage that transition as effectively as possible. If I could jump forward to a city of the future, we absolutely have dreams. I'll just give you, very tangible and real examples. If I own a car in a city, let's call it New York City or San Francisco, doesn't really matter. A privately owned car is parked like 90% of the time. So if you think about the real estate I need to park it in a congested city, the amount of money that costs, and the opportunity cost of how that land might be able to be used differently, does it really make sense to have 90%? And by the way, the car payment you make every day, it's quite a luxury to be paying for the right to be able to drive a car through the 10% of the time that you need it. And it's great that we can do it, but it's probably not the most efficient way for a city. And lots of people who are making car payments and parking payments have given up owning cars in cities for that very reason. So if we could all jump to self-driving ride-sharing experiences, which is where we think the world is headed, I could probably solve people's mobility and transportation needs with far fewer cars than we have today. The other factors, if you think of Uber drivers and Lyft drivers, each of them own their own car. Each of them can drive, but they can only drive 8 or 10 hours a day without getting tired. And so I probably need 3 people and 3 different cars to provide 24 hours worth of service. A self-driving car never gets tired, and it can just keep going. And so the opportunity, again, to serve people's mobility needs with far fewer cars and far fewer people should free up a lot of congestion. That's real estate that can be used for housing. It could be used for green space. The cars should always be in motion. And so imagine a city where cars are just always moving and they're never parked, right? Wouldn't that be a wonder?
No individual owns them, right? It's like the Airbnb of automobiles.
That's exactly right. So if we can ever get to that vision, it will be hard. The opportunity to have more green space, more housing, less congestion, and quite frankly, a more mobile, fluid city that is in motion at all times becomes the opportunity, right? And and some people will argue we might have to build a city from scratch to ever deliver on that vision. Other people would argue that New York City looks very different today than it did in 1970, and so there's a chance. It's going to take some time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we've got another question for you, Lucas. This one comes from Nick. And the question is, when is it okay to program AI to break the rules? For example, if a policeman waves a car to drive around an accident, so how are we gonna deal with AI to understand? I don't know. This kind of sounds like right from wrong.
Sure. Well, again, I think there is rules-based logic, which computers have been able to do for a long time, right? If the stop sign says red, then the car stops. And I know that we have an obligation to follow the law. And at the same time, the next level of intelligence would suggest that if a police officer who represents the law waves you by, they are giving you permission to pass from, a legal entity. So now is the car smart enough to recognize that logic, right? Artificial intelligence, the higher end of where the space and the technology and the promise sits, suggests that we should be able to get to a point where we can reason and make logic like humans. We're not there yet today, but that would be the dream. We have systems for being able to handle that situation until the artificial intelligence can make those decisions. That's confidential, and so I can't really share. But at the end of the day, we hope to be able to both answer two questions. Our intent is to follow the laws of the land in which we operate, and at the same time, our intent would be to offer judgment that is consistent with what humans would expect. And so we often have to get back to what we consider first principles. And there's all sorts of these ethical dilemmas that we can, tie ourselves in knots around. And so it requires that a company and the ethics of a company be clear on what your first principles are. And if you have clearly defined your principles and you share them and communicate what they are, then people will understand how you as a company make decisions. And then consumers will have to make decisions on which companies do they view as their principles and beliefs and values align with their own, and who am I willing to trust? And that's all the stuff that we have to work through, whether it's Cruise, whether it's Waymo, whether it's Uber or Lyft, whether it's Pipestream. Every company will have to consider those issues for the future.
And no pun intended, but it's just following the rules of the road, right?
Yeah, but as we know, humans don't always follow those rules, right? And so that's where interpretation and gray area becomes really, really tricky. And this is why it's a fun problem. And I don't mean to suggest that we have it all figured out yet. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, we've got time for one last question. And thank you, everybody, for your great participation in this reboot of Peeples2People with Lucas Watson. So last question is from Catherine. And Catherine wants to know, is there enough talent in the marketplace to make AI meet its potential today?
That's a great question. I don't know that I know, but I'd say the following. In general, there is tremendous demand for data scientists, for software engineers, for statisticians, for the skill sets that are required to make artificial intelligence work. If you work in that field, you have more job offers than you have time.
Right.
As a result, that might suggest that the demand is greater than the supply. And if I were coaching my kids, it's certainly an area that I would urge them to go into because it's a field that will have a voracious appetite for talent for a long time. So the short answer is probably no, we don't have enough folks. It's such a new space. I think it will be a growth industry from a talent standpoint for a long, long time.
Well, and as you pointed out earlier, we're training our young people for jobs that we can't even conceptualize of today. So plenty of room for opportunity there. Listen, I want to thank you, Lucas Watson, CMO of Cruise Automation, for joining us today. And want to thank everybody. And hello, shout out to all my peeps back in the Pipestream office. And I want to tell you that today's presentation was brought to you by Pipestream Digital Labs. And please stay tuned and watch for the next episode. We love you joining us. So thank you very much. Visit us at www.pipestream.com.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll see you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.